Hello, Andrew Colsky from StopMyOCD.com. Today we're going to be talking about the obsessive doubt lexicon. These are words and phrases that are used by OCD and anxiety to maintain doubt and keep control over us. Once we learn these words and phrases, we're better equipped and better aware of when OCD and anxiety are trying to take over, and through skills training, we can find ways to avoid getting stuck in that cycle. So in order to explain this further, let's take a look at the OCD process. In the OCD process, there's two worlds. There's the here and now, and in the here and now, we typically will have something that triggers what we call an obsessive thought. So something may happen and I start thinking to myself, my hands might be contaminated. Now, the good part about being in the here and now is that it's all based upon factual information and our senses. So what do I mean by that? Well, maybe I know that I just changed a flat tire. And I can look at my hands and I can see grease and grime on my hands. And I can feel that they're all gritty and they smell terrible. Well, if I have the thought that my hands are dirty, I can support that with the facts of the situation, and certainly it makes sense that I would go and wash them. But let's talk about what happens when we move to the other world. This is the OCD cycle world. And there's four phases of that world. The first one is obsessive doubt. Now, doubt is when we have the factual information, but we just don't believe it. And OCD is great at making us doubt, even though we have factual information. So let's take another case here. Let's say that I just woke up, I took a shower, I came out of the shower, I went right to the kitchen, and I poured myself a cup of coffee. Well, OCD may place this thought in my head that says, well, your hands might be contaminated, and if they are, then they might contaminate your coffee, and you start thinking about the consequences, which is, well, that could make me sick, and then I could make other people sick, and I don't want that to happen, and boy, this is really distressing, which is the next thing we feel is that distress. And distress can be anything from mild distress all the way up to a panic attack. And it's so bothersome and we just want it to stop. So what do? We do a compulsion. In this case, our compulsion might be to go and wash our hands so that we don't feel bad and worry about contamination. And compulsions are great because they're really effective for the short term. And then they wear off, and we go right back into the obsessive doubt. Well, what if you missed a spot on your hands and they're still contaminated? You could still make yourself sick and make other people sick, and then that starts to make you feel distress. And then the distress gets so bad that you go back and you do the compulsion and you wash your hands again, but you do it longer and better this time. And then you feel better. And then the doubt comes back. And it says, well, maybe you might have missed that spot on the back of your left thumb. You could still get sick. And around and around we go. We stay in the cycle. So this is the OCD process. So how does the lexicon help us understand this? Well, if you take a look at what's going on here with the big red arrow, you'll see that there's a divide between the here and now and entering the OCD cycle. And the one thing that's different between the here and now and then the entering of the OCD cycle is that, as I've said, in the here and now, we're dealing with factual information supported by facts, supported by our senses. When we move over into the OCD cycle and we start with obsessive doubt uses one of the 9 types of lexicon language models that I'm going to give you here. So when you can recognize the lexicon, you can recognize when OCD or anxiety is trying to pull you into its world. So that's why we do this. All right, let's take a look now. When we talk about the OCD lexicon, the first thing we talk about is things out of your control. So how many times have you referred to the elusive foe, they? They are thinking bad things about me. They won't like me if I do X. Well, they also have a close cousin, everybody. Everybody thinks I'm strange. Everybody knows this about me. Well, since we can't identify who they and everybody are, then we can't possibly know if our thoughts are true. And even if we could identify someone in particular and we ask them what they're thinking, we don't know for a fact that they're thinking that. They could be, being nice in what they're telling us. So we can never know what's in someone else's mind. The thoughts are out of our control, and then that makes us feel powerless. So watch out for they and everybody. Next, emotion over logic. Well, what's this all about? Well, snakes make me feel scared. I'm afraid of getting bitten. And we say this and we have that fear even if the snake that we see is small and moving rapidly away from us, because our emotions take over. How about, I'm scared of being in high places because I know I'm going to fall, even though we may be inside a building with strong walls and windows. Emotions are powerful and they make us think, well, I'm going to be the one that the window breaks on. So these feelings may not be factual, logical, or realistic, but they can force us to act as if they are. Emotions also feed off of the possible probable issue that we're going to talk about below. Next one, confirmation bias. And this is a big one today. So everything that I read supports what I think. Well, this is also exacerbated today by the internet and social media algorithms that feed us more of what we once searched. So if I'm concerned about whether walking across a fertilized field will cause me to track dangerous chemicals into my home, then I'll research dangers of fertilizer. And guess what? I'm going to find information that tells me that there are some dangers with fertilizer. Of course, I don't research the positive sides of fertilizer, or whether fertilizer on the bottom of my shoes can cause damage if I walk in the house after walking across the lawn. We don't get into the details. We just look up dangers of fertilizer, and lo and behold, there's information to support what we want to believe, or what OCD is telling us to believe. All right, next one. And this kind of plays off of what we just talked about. Overgeneralization. We often make information fit our expectations. If I fear chlorine, then I'm going to be able to find data showing that it's harmful. But I conveniently ignore how much chlorine did they use in this study, if it was a study that I'm reading, in what concentration, how did they use it. I ignore all that. And I forget about the fact that we swim in chlorine all the time, and we even use it to make our drinking water safe, so we're drinking it. But I choose to ignore those facts, and I overgeneralize and decide that swimming in tap water is going to harm me, even though they don't harm anybody else. Complex over simple thinking. This principle is often referred to as Occam's razor. Occam was a philosopher best known for his belief that the simplest, most direct explanation for something was probably the true one. But in the doubt lexicon, we develop an unverifiable rationale supporting doubt. How about, I'm afraid of viruses. I touched a public doorknob, so I don't want to eat food until I wash my hands. If I can't wash my hands, I should not use a fork and knife either, because viruses can crawl off of my hands and down the silverware onto my food. Now, factually, that's just not the case, but we can create that when we're doing complex over simple thinking. Next one, possibility becomes probability. This one is huge, and I see this all the time. Life is not black and white. Even though OCD wants us to find black and white, we never can and never will, which is why it's the doubting disease. No matter how much we try to prove something, we can always come up with some possible exception that sows doubt. Thus, if anything is possible, no matter how remote, it must be a valid concern, is the way our thinking goes. The problem is that possible does not mean probable, unless you have left the here and now and entered the OCD cycle. The argument goes like this. People get in car accidents every day, so if I drive, I will probably get into a car accident. Well, no, it's possible that you could get into a car accident. That's true. It is not probable that you will. So similarly, if you purchase a lottery ticket, it is possible that you may win. It's probable that you won't. Next, anecdotes. So who can we trust more than ourselves? If we have a story that we can relate to our current thoughts, then it can exert powerful persuasion. The problem is that anecdotes are not specific to a current set of facts. We may think, I was bitten by a dog when I was 6 years old, so this dog will bite me. But if we look at the evidence in the here and now, we don't see this dog showing his teeth, growling, or snarling. He's actually wagging his tail and laying with his belly up. Not really a dog that's going to bite us. A similar cousin to anecdotes is hearsay. Hearsay is like trusting someone else's anecdote. There's a reason that hearsay is barred from legal proceedings. It's because it's unreliable. I heard a story about someone getting sick from bleach, but that story doesn't take into consideration the facts of this particular situation in the here and now. Maybe someone did get sick from bleach, but we don't know if they were allergic to it or if they ingested it. All we know is we're using dental bleaching strips designed to whiten our teeth, and that's bleach, but there's no evidence that those are bad. So someone's story about bleach that's non-specific doesn't apply to our specific situation. False causation. This is a good one. Correlation is not causation. A patient may report, I have avoided stepping on sidewalk cracks for the last 10 years, and during that time, my mother has not broken her back. That is a correlation. It is also a correlation that in the last 10 years, I did not step on a crack and I aged 10 years. Would you say that avoiding stepping on cracks caused you to age 10 years? No. That's a correlation. It means that two things seem to have something in similar, but it is not causation, meaning that one thing caused the other. So in other words, if I take a pen and I write on the back of my hand and I make a mark, using the pen to write on my hand caused the mark to appear. But at the same time, if I did that and there was lightning outside, using a pen to write on the back of my hand while happening at the same time that lightning happened didn't cause the lightning to happen. It correlated with it. So these are 9 things that I've been able to identify in the OCD and the anxiety lexicon. If you hear yourself using those, then you are most likely dealing with obsessive doubt or in that other world away from the here and now. The here and now is what is. The obsessive lexicon is what could be, might be. So that will help when you're working on your treatment for OCD and anxiety. So again, I'm Andrew Colsky with StopMyOCD.com. Please like and subscribe to these videos to help us spread the word. And if you would like, you can join our free OCD support group at StopMyOCD.com. We'd love to see you there. There's no cost, and it's really helpful for a lot of people. So thank you for watching the video.